the Republicans have their issue sets, which of course is that you're now teaching graduate level critical race theory classes in kindergarten, which of course does seem ridiculous to do because they haven't gone through some of the survey courses before, but et cetera, et cetera. The Democrats, it seemed to me, have had this opportunity to actually run against something or someone in a midterm in a way that Republicans always seem to come up with, right? Like they would go against Obamacare or the Clintons. They did this, it seems like, for decades. But the Democrats could run against Donald Trump in the midterm elections. And that seems to be what they're doing. And they're using January 6th as a mechanism to do that. Will you talk about that? Because that to me, I don't know that they're executing that strategy in the way that I would suggest that they do it, but they're at least pursuing that strategy.
Yeah, they are. And it's noticeable to me. I wrote about it this week because I go and check what were the ads 3 years ago, the ads 5 years ago, what are the ads now? The Democratic thinking of 2018 and for a lot of 2020 was, if you're just focusing on Trump, then people think you don't stand for anything else. It does have a way of overwhelming things. You could run 10 ads about your tax plan, one ad about Trump, and it'll be, why are you talking about Trump so much? What January 6th did change that, and Trump's approach to the post-presidency changed that, because he is driving the news and also the belief systems of Republicans. That is unique. I mean, we always like in political reporting to find an analog or find a narrative that has been part of this before. That is pretty unique. Maybe you could go to Teddy Roosevelt clamoring throughout 1909, 1910, and then coming back and running again. But Republicans around the country weren't at that time just changing what they stood for because Teddy Roosevelt told them to. This is new, and so it happens that the two big, three, if we can include the California recall, all the big statewide races this year are in Democratic states. And the Democratic theory is, look, we have some problems, but demographically right now we know there are lots of white liberals who just don't vote in off-year elections and might be unhappy about issues 1, 2, or 3. But those white liberals, if we really emphasize that Donald Trump, who you thought you beat, is still here and is shaping everything that you were worried about is still happening because of him. That's what they're trying. So you see images of January 6th and everything down to state legislative races in Virginia. There's a Republican who had some clients who were January 6th protesters. Democrats ran against that. There's the Republican Governors Association did some robocalling, to show up on January 6th, back when it was promoting the Trump rally. Democrats are using that. So any kind of Republican connection to it, they're using, and they're kind of beasting it out because they're getting some criticism. I always find it ironic. If you turn on cable, CNN or MSNBC, it's about Trump about half the time, generously. It's probably more than that. But I've noticed they'll bring on a Terry McAuliffe or Phil Murphy and say, like, are you talking too much about Trump? They're kind of revealing. Well, no, they're kind of revealing. I think this happened with McAuliffe on Dana Bash's show, I think. And no, I think they're doing a little self-denial here. The reason they're still talking about Donald Trump's existence and trying to reshape the country into a kind of one-party conservative Orbanish state, they talk about that. So when Democrats are talking about it, that's the same audience. The mom in Fairfax and Loudoun County who got really organized in 2017 and might be disappointed now, getting her back out. And I saw a little of that happen just talking to voters in Virginia last week. You did hear among Democrats, one of the first things that comes up is that Republicans have gone crazy. I have to vote against Trump, things like that. It is kind of new. And it's some are more blunt about it and say, look, in a typical midterm, even if things are good, you just run on, we did some stuff, people don't turn out. You do need to scare people. So if you want to be despondent about it, it's both parties. I'm not doing a both sides thing. I'm just saying things are so polarized. The demographics of the parties are so set that people say, well, we know about who turned out in 2020. So let's get as many of them out as possible. What does it take? And it turns out Democrats think right now what it takes is reminding them of the Trump role in the party, which I think leaves out a lot. I mean, that leaves them vulnerable because there's just issues that Trump talked about in a kind of unsophisticated way. Like critical race theory is a great example. Trump attacked in 2020. It was kind of haphazard. People don't know what it meant. Taking that away from Trump and seeing it manifest with all these conservative groups that make it more about, no, your kid, trust me, this is what's happened to your kid. I think Democrats underrated a little bit of how once that became an activist issue, it would change from being a Trump issue. But they can point out, like, this is a Trump issue. This is the people. This is what I think Terry McAuliffe in Virginia has tried to do with mixed success. Is yes, you see and hear the people yelling about critical race theory. That is all a Trump made up issue. Don't worry about it. And I think they've kind of tried to wait out the moral panic here and assume that's just not going to be big enough to overwhelm it. But it's way easier to just say, this is the same kind of Trump division, race baiting politics. That it's actually gotten him pretty far. He's still ahead in the race despite months of Republicans attacking that issue. I think and it helps them that Trump will occasionally come back and make a comment on Virginia or call into a rally or put out a statement. I mean, there's a Pavlovian effect of covering everything he does in the press. So Republicans get asked about it. That Democrats do think that benefits them. And finally, like the tell is that Trump is just not campaigning in these places. Trump is not physically going to the states where these elections are happening because he's not popular and Republicans don't want him to come. And when that's the case, the other party says, okay, well, we know your weakness. You're kind of telling us you don't want us to talk about this gigantic figure in your party who's really unpopular here. Got it. We're going to do that right away.
I mean, that to me seems, I mean, I subscribe and have been saying this for months that they should be running against Trump. I wonder, I'm curious about that. Because you have this dynamic, right? That is in 2018, the Democrats came out in more numbers than the Republicans, even though they both came out in sort of record numbers. More Democrats came out because the only way they could vote against Trump was to vote against Republicans. Mm-hmm. It's not the same relationship when you're coming out trying to vote for Trump that you're voting for Republicans. But they're going to come out and they're trying to make critical race theories distinct from the Trumpism in the party.
Yeah.
How well are the Democrats focusing on Trump? Sometimes I fear that they get too wrapped up in January 6th and we're, speaking on political terms here. So I just want people, before they send me the email about Democrats need to do something. Of course, I think on policy grounds, maybe even more so than political grounds, frankly, but certainly to deliver their base, they need to deliver some material benefits so that you get those people. But we're talking about the people who are low propensity voters. Maybe they'll come out in a general election, but they don't generally come out in these off-year elections unless they can feel like they're voting against Trump. And I wonder if the Democrats aren't focusing. I know the idea is like January 6th is a surrogate for Trump, but I wonder if that surrogate is just too far removed. And if they couldn't just say, like, this guy I'm running against is a Trumpista.
They do say that. They do. I wrote the story. Sorry to talk over it, and I've talked too much, so I'll be quick. But I wrote the story about January 6th just because I was saying specifically, there are images of January 6th running in TV ads, and not every Democrat, but Democrats who think that it's who were on the fence about whether that would be effective. Do people forget things 6 months later? They say no. It's awful enough. These images are awful enough. The ongoing story is awful enough that we can use it. But they're being explicit about Trump and Trumpism, and that's really Newsom, Phil Murphy in New Jersey, and Terry McAuliffe all talk the same way, which is, we won, we beat, because all three states Trump lost them. We did our work. He's gone, but Trumpism is still here. And the word Trumpism, each one of them has said in some form. In New Jersey, there are, if you go to the really Democratic areas like Newark and Jersey City, there's Democratic Party signs that just say, vote for Murphy, defeat the Trump team. And in Virginia, they actually, the McAuliffe campaign has made signs, and there's more to campaigns and signs, but has made signs that are exactly like the Youngkin logo, but they have Trump endorses Youngkin on it in the same font. And that is a trolling. It's the same color, same design. but it is just saying, hey, suburbanites, these guys are exactly like that guy. Don't let them rebrand. They haven't changed at all. And it does remind you more of what Republicans have done effectively with like Jimmy Carter or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, and say, all right, they're gone, or Hillary Clinton still. I mean, who still appears in campaign ads for Republicans. Right. It is borrowing from the Republicans saying, and I think some of the shift is, look, now that our base has a lot of college educated white voters who were Republican, but now they're Democrats. What is it? And you find this with like the Lincoln Project people, right? That the Lincoln Project people's main issue, because it's the one thing they totally agree with Democrats on, is defending democracy, Trump as a threat, Trump as authoritarian. So as those issues, I feel like they're not the ones that people might, the average person mentions first, but the average person does not vote. Like in an off-year election, it's going to be like 40% if you're lucky of people voting. So it's about saying, all right, we're done doing the thing where we have nothing really to run on. Just beg you to vote. Here's the villain. Here's the red shirt. We're gonna wave it.
What's your sense of how that's going? Like there's a lot of talk about Virginia tightening and McAuliffe, stumbling. I feel like every time we get close to Virginia, it's the same sort of story. Like, I don't know. It feels like there's a couple of places. It always feels like this is the year Texas is going to go blue, and this is the year that, in Virginia, it's going to swing back red. What's your sense of what's going on the ground?
Well, yeah, I think Democrats are running a good campaign. Their turnout in early voting they've been winning that, like less of a landslide than 2020, but bigger than 2017. So they're executing, but they're Republicans just are closing out with a couple moral panics, and moral panics are not new to Virginia. Remember, the first race I watched when I was living in Virginia in 2005 was the race for governor and attorney general that year. It was all about child sexual predators. Because the Republican had been attorney general, Republican nominee for governor, and he cracked down on child sexual predators. He was tough on child sexual predators. Well, Democrats let them out of jail. That sort of that's like the whole children are at risk ethos. Or that's been running through campaigns forever. And the current version of it is both in Virginia, the liberals want to teach your kids these crazy things that who knows what they're teaching, and they don't want you to have a say in it. I'm not sure. I'm kind of lottie-dying it, because it's if you push it, it is stuff like they're being told that America was founded on slavery and things like we don't need to go through a whole 1619 project. It's that, but it's also there's a case before Loudoun County instituted a open door kind of transgender use the bathroom of your choice. Before they did that, a couple months before, there was a sexual assault that's being investigated that was reported, et cetera, working through the system. The moral panic version of this, Republicans, is thanks to Democrats, loose tolerant policies of these schools. They don't say tolerant. It's happening, people. It's happening. The transgender people are breaking in and committing sexual assault. You've seen that at the close of the campaign. Very familiar. The close of a lot of campaigns is, when in doubt, children are endangered. Children are endangered. Children are going to be sexualized. They're going to be corrupted. They're going to be ruined. And I don't think the Democrats were quite ready to respond to that, because their message is, yes, we're the party that's going to protect children from waste and poverty and COVID-19. We're keep the schools open with vaccine mandates. Still incredibly popular. Republicans have tried to turn that, and you see in some of the coverage, if people are shorthanding, it's like Youngkin closes on education, and that's been irritating the Democrats. They say, look, literally the first policy that McAuliffe rolled out was a giant education budget. Youngkin took months to come up with anything else. There's much more to education than, are you going to stop them from teaching, Nicole Hannah-Jones, or there's much more to it than that. But they're not good at it. Like, every time there's a moral panic, very rarely do Democrats grab the wheel and win. When they do, like they did I'm in Minnesota now, so I'm thinking about it. When they do, like with the racial justice protest last year, they eventually get embarrassed by something and they back out of it. So that's how it's closing in Virginia. Now, just because Republicans, I think, have like hammered this message, they do that every election, right? At this point in 2017, it was that Gillespie was doing great job seizing the MS-13 sanctuary city issue. 4 years before that, it was that the Obamacare website's failure that was crashing things. I remember with Tim Kaine, it was what I just mentioned: the child sexual predators, the death penalty, all these sorts of issues. There's always something that it tightens at the end, and it's like a jump ball. I mean, I feel like if it's a McAuliffe win by a couple of points or a loss by a couple of points, the same message will be like, some of this stuff clearly worked. Democrats clearly turned out some, but not enough of their voters. But it's all, that's really it. Like they're trying to say the ending of this race is this is a dangerous Republican Party that can't be trusted, that's really radical, and we're going to just fix the normal things like education. And the Republican message is more of like a moral panic. Things are falling apart, and Democrats are, for your children in particular, Democrats are not going to fix it.